Welcome to ground control. What changes have I made to this plane since I performed the maiden flight? Alright, so first off, I removed the motor mount and I put 2 nylon washers on the bottom of the motor mount, and those were 1 millimeter thick to bring the thrust line back toward the CG on the wing, the CG line on the wing. Because when I performed the first launch for the maiden flight, it did nose down a little bit on launch, and then when I was abrupt with throttling up on it, it would push the nose down a little bit. So that told me that the thrust line on the motor was a little forward of the CG. It works like a lever, and it wants to pitch, it wants to rotate the plane in the pitch axis. So providing a little more up angle and bringing the thrust line back toward the CG line should mitigate a lot of that. We'll see how well that works out when we take it out. What else did I do? Let me see. I put some wing tape on the bottom of the wings so it's a little easier to see in the sky and a little easier to tell orientation, especially when you don't have blue skies up there that you're flying in. Where I have to land, it is extremely rough, so I don't know if I went over this, but on the tail boom section where it mates up to the fuselage, I didn't want to just leave that as glue only because this was going to get really stressed out where I have to land. So I took 3 pieces of carbon slat. I cut them in 60 millimeter lengths, and the carbon slats are 1 millimeter thick by 5 millimeter wide. And I embedded 2 of those on the side, the top sides up here, and then 1 on the bottom. And then also, because the tail skid is attached to the horizontal stabilizer, I didn't want to leave the horizontal stabilizer with just glue holding it together. So I also put a carbon slat in the bottom of the tail boom that crosses the mating surface of the horizontal stabilizer and the end of the tail boom to make sure that that was going to be nice and secure, because that is also going to get really stressed out where I have to land. Okay, so I spoke about the amount of current that this power system is drawing on 4S Lipo in a static position, and I posted that information on our Facebook page. Now, when I saw that this came with an APC style 8x4 prop, and it's a 2212 1400 kV motor running on a 4S Lipo. So I went back and I looked at the 2214 motors, 2212 1400 kV motors that I have tested with various props. And so I had a pretty good idea that this system was going to be pulling more than 30 amps in a static position, and it comes with a 30 amp speed controller. So I hooked up a 40 amp ESC to it, one that I had ready to go. I went ahead and soldered on 3.5 millimeter bullets on the motor, put the stock prop on it, and sure enough, at full throttle in the static position, it was pulling 34, I think it was 34.4 amps. Don't hold me to that, but I know it was over 30 amps. The numbers are posted on the Facebook page, so you can get accurate numbers from that. So I took one of my JXF 8x4 composite props, which is a more efficient prop than this APC style prop. And I think at full throttle on a 4S, it was only pulling 24 amps. So I believe that's what it was pulling. I know it was well under 30 amps. So if you want to use the stock speed controller that came with it, the 30 amp speed controller, my recommendation would be to put a more efficient 8x4 prop on it. Or if you want that additional power, which is what I like to have, because I'm not going to be flying long range FPV with it, I switched out the 30 amp speed controller with a 40 amp speed controller, and I have plenty of headroom on that now, so I have no worries there. And the 40 amp speed controller is what I had in this for the maiden flight. Yeah, one thing I haven't had time to do yet is I haven't had time to fabricate a new foam panel to go over my GPS shelf. I don't know if you guys watched the maiden flight, but that came off in flight and went through the meat grinder, that prop there, so that's gone. I should have put some tape over it before I launched it, but I just didn't think about it, and so I lost that panel. I was breaking down the cardboard box. I don't know if you guys watched the assembly video. The shipping company just about destroyed the box this came in, and they ended up warping the vertical stabilizer. They ended up warping the horizontal stabilizer. They broke off the tab on the latch for the canopy, so I was having to use a screwdriver to pull the latch back to remove the canopy from it. So I was breaking down that box the other day to throw it away, and lo and behold, there was that little plastic tab was in the bottom of the box. So I glued that back onto the latch. So now I actually have a tab to use to remove the canopies from this plane instead of having to use a screwdriver now. So I've got that ready to go. The other thing that I did was the roll rate was pretty lethargic. The ailerons were very responsive in normal flight. As a matter of fact, I needed more expo with where they were. But I modified the linkage at the control horns on the ailerons because they were in the bottom hole. There's only 2 holes on those control horns. So I moved those ball link clevises up to the top hole to give me more movement on the ailerons, and I also increased my expo at the same time. So we'll see how that works out. The elevator had plenty of elevator during that flight. It would pull a nice tight loop and with plenty of power. But if you're going to use this as a long-range FPV system, which is what it was designed to do, I would definitely recommend putting a more efficient prop on it because you'll get tons more flight time. Now, I think when I got back, I looked at how much time I had this plane in the air, and I was not easy in the throttle at all. And I think the amount of flight time, the amount of time I had it in the air during the maiden flight, I think was 7 minutes and 10 seconds. And I tested the Lipo right after I landed it, and I still had just over 4 volts per cell in that 4S Lipo. It was a 4S 2200 milliamp hour 100C Lipo, I think is what it was. So the way I was flying it, doing aerobatics and stuff with it, I would be able to get at least 21 minutes of flight out of it, leaving approximately 3.6 volts per cell in it. So I don't have any doubt that just flying this at cruising speed is a camera and FPV platform that you're definitely, I think they're right. I think you're going to be able to get an hour of flight time out of this plane. And they were using the 4500 milliamp hour 4S Lipo for their tests where they got an hour flight with it. But I think if you put a more efficient prop on it, I think you're going to be able to use a smaller Lipo and you're still going to be able to get an hour worth of flight time out of this. So anyway, we'll see how my adjustments worked out. I'll meet you out at the field. Okay, I have the Eachine ATOMRC Seal Wing G1500 back out today for review part 3. Made some adjustments to it. Alright, so same as last time. Throw it into the air, give it about 60% throttle. Alright, launching. Ooh, that was not a very good toss. Alright, throttle back. That was a terrible launch. Okay, so one thing I wanted to see, I want to come through here and then increase the throttle considerably and see how the nose reacts on it. That's much better than it was. That thrust angle modification on it really helps that out. Alright, we're gliding. 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 Gliding.
How about that? All right, let's see what our roll rate looks like now. Still pretty slow, but I think it's better than it was. I've got as gliding. I've got as much mechanical advantage, or as much movement as I can get on the ailerons mechanically. It's very, very maneuverable for such a big plane. Gliding. Gliding. Like I said, it has an excellent glide profile. Okay, so let's take it up, gain some altitude. And it gains altitude quickly. This has a ton of power. So what I want to see is I want to see what a stall looks like. Pulling back, pulling back. Okay, there's your stall. All it did was nose down and go on. All right, let's go back through here and do it again. I'm going to shut the throttle all the way off and then pull up. Okay, throttle's off. Pulling up on the stick. There you go. There's your stall. No drama stalls. How about that? It just drops its nose and goes on. Throttle's off. Throttle's still off. Throttle's still off. It's just freewheeling. Throttle's still off. Throttle's still off. Pretty good glide, huh? Throttle's off. Throttle's off. Throttle's off. Alright, power's back on. Yeah, I'm surprised at how maneuverable it is for a big, long-range FPV plane, but the ailerons are very, very responsive on this. Okay, so let's take it up and see what kind of rudder we have. We got plenty of elevator. Got as much aileron as I can get in it right now. Kind of slow on the turn on the rudder. I'll have to see if I can put a little more rudder in it. Well, I tell you, that wing tape on the stripes, black stripes on the bottom of the wing really help the visibility, don't they? Yeah, roll rate's better. Throttle's off. Throttle's off. Throttle's still off. Throttle's off. Yeah, guys, I think this is going to be a really good, just cruising around flying FPV or, long range FPV. The way I'm flying and I'm not easy in the throttle. With this 4S, look at that. Look how much power. With this 4S, 2200 milliamp hour Lipo, flying it the way I'm flying, pretty heavy in the throttle a lot of the time, I get 21 minutes of flight out of it. Last time I was out here, I had it in the air for 7 minutes, 10 seconds, and I still had just a little over 4 volts per cell. That's pretty awesome. Cuts through the air really well, holds on to a lot of its momentum. It's a fun plane to fly, I'll say that for it. I can't get over how maneuverable this is. And how much power it has. Look at that. That has considerable amount of power. And I've got it at 1,100 grams, right about at the recommended weight, 1,100 grams. And it feels like it has a very, very light wing loading, especially the way it's handling. And the way it's gliding, I think it's going to be able to carry a considerable amount of weight. What do you guys think of that, huh? Pretty impressive. I think it's a keeper. I think that it needs just a tick more thrust angle adjustment. I've got 1 millimeter washers under it, and I think about maybe another 0.5 millimeter under that motor mount, and I think that thrust angle is going to be right where it needs to be. So that was a stall turn there, so it's really slow to rotate. It doesn't have a really large rudder, but I'll have to see if I can get more movement out of it. Okay, so let me walk back here toward the road, make sure I've got everything clear out here to land. We'll come in from the other direction. Walking and flying, walking and flying. We have to go around again because it really cuts through the air. See if we can set it down. There we go. Sweet! I barely touched the elevator to bring the nose up. Of course, I have it balanced at the CG. The specified CG seems right on the money. I have it neutrally balanced on the specified CG, and when I was gliding in for a landing, I barely had to touch the elevator to bring the nose up. So that's pretty high performance, I think, for a long range FPV plane. So my final thoughts on this aircraft is it's got tons of power, tons of power, and it's a fairly aerobatic plane for what it's designed for. It has lots of space for a very large Lipo. It has a huge equipment bay for just about anything you want to put in it. It has a GPS bay on the top there. It handles really well. Like I said, 1,100 grams. It has very light wing loading. Has an excellent glide profile. I love the fact that it has 2 different wing configurations. So if you wanted to fly this at a 1.1 meter wingspan instead of a 1.5 meter wingspan, I mean, it would be a pretty aerobatic plane. An even more aerobatic plane if you wanted to fly it at 1.1 meters. And I'm sure then the rolls will be nice and crisp on it. But the only thing that I need to adjust the motor angle just a slight amount and see if I can get a little more movement on the rudder. The elevator is awesome. Elevators are good. I don't know at 1.5 meters with the size of the ailerons if I'm going to get any better roll rate out of it, but it's not designed as an aerobatic plane. But so my opinion, it's a keeper. All right, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the air.